Hiya friends, Prepared Suburbanite back at you. A couple of days ago I published a video, and I opened up the video by asking a question that said, do you trust the current administration to keep us out of the next World War, World War III? And I asked the question to solicit some response and some commentary in the comment section and all that, but I guess I was somewhat surprised by a couple of the responses. And so I'm going to open this particular video up with a question. Who is the biggest enemy we face today? So stick around, I'll get into a whole lot of detail. So the first comment that really caught my attention from that video was this one. Yes, I do have confidence that this administration will do a great job, with 3 exclamation points. What you are insinuating about what is coming, it sounds like a conspiracy. Let's stick to the facts. Well, some of the facts that may have been mentioned in that video, I think this commenter didn't stay for the whole video, because there was an awful lot of things that I talked about that are based in fact. But I'm going to spend a little bit more time in this video to really get into some of the facts. So these comments, I think, are very indicative of the left-wing indoctrination into the thinking of the people that exist out there. And there apparently are 70 million of them that voted for the current president, and I suspect that we're in for quite an uphill battle in the next election cycle. And the second comment is, I respectfully disagree with you that when you say that the current administration is not ready for this. U.S. is the world leader, and if a NATO country is attacked, then the U.S., along with all our NATO allies, will be in World War III. As for ammo being in short supply, which I mentioned in that video, I think the next World War will be fought over the internet and not so much with guns. Okay, when I say what's the most dangerous enemy that we face today here in this country, I'm talking about wokeism. I'm talking about the leftist indoctrination. It's okay to disagree, but when you take ad hominem attacks against the person who is disagreeing with you or that you disagree with, then I feel compelled to really get into dealing with the facts. I didn't insinuate. I gave you facts. So I'll stick with the facts. Okay, I did mention, like I said, the ammo shortage. And we do have an ammo shortage because we've been shipping all our manufactured ammo to support the Ukrainian people in their fight to keep free, I guess. But what makes me most concerned about the ammo shortage is the fact that many of the components that go into making ammunition are not native. They are imported from places that are not our friends. So I remain very concerned about that. I think I also mentioned that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at the lowest level, I think, in the last 40 years. Yep, 40 years. And that we've only got 18 days of our reserves in the bank right now to use if anything does happen. So when I say that the current administration may not be ready, is not ready for a potential for World War III, 18 days worth of strategic petroleum reserves ain't enough. And how did we get there? Well, in an effort to keep inflation in check, to keep gasoline prices at the pump down, our illustrious president decided to release billions of barrels of oil from our strategic reserves in an effort to combat inflation and in an effort to keep the price at the pumps somewhat reasonable. We are fighting a proxy war in Ukraine right now, and I've been trying to nail down how much we've spent, and believe me, I challenge you to go find out how much we've actually spent and how it's defined and what's been approved and what hasn't been and how they look at it. But one of the numbers that seems to come up a couple of times is that there has been $113 billion in U.S. congressionally approved aid to Ukraine. Now that may include armaments, it may include humanitarian services like healthcare and things like that, food, but according to a couple of sources that are fairly reliable, it's $113 billion. There are other numbers floating around out there that are pushing over 196 to $200 billion, but it's relatively unsupported. I didn't see any direct references to what that all entails. So that's a troubling fact when I look around at what our infrastructure needs, bridges, roads, all that kind of stuff. Let's not forget that, let me see, that Biden's Build Back Better plan never really got off the ground. Now, that was supposed to address all these issues of our infrastructure, the bridges, the roads, airports, ports of entry, seaports, that kind of a thing, but it never grew legs. And that's one of the big platforms that he ran on, and it never came to fruition because I think it was way too lofty, way too expensive, and folks just wouldn't simply tolerate it. So some of the other things that I did not mention that I see as evidence that our current administration is not ready and will not be ready to defend us or protect us in the event a World War III level event occurs. And that's our border security. The immigration issues that we're dealing with right now, human trafficking, the fentanyl outrage that's going on right now, it's absolutely out of control, even though our illustrious Alejandro Mayorkas says that the border is secured. He is a bald-faced liar, and prove me wrong. Let's see. Oh, military recruitment. I didn't mention this in my previous video, but military recruitment is in the toilet right now, and I'm very concerned about that, having a close member of my family on active duty in the U.S. Army right now, on his second enlistment, and I'm proud of him for doing what he's doing, sticking up for the United States. But for right now, the latest numbers that I could turn up is that the U.S. Army has fallen 15,000 below target on 2023 recruiting. That's a drop, or that's a miss of 23%. The Navy is down 10% from their targets, and that's down 26%. The Air Force is down 10%. So if we're to have a ready fighting force, a ready defensive force, a ready any kind of national protection force, recruiting has to be on the up and up. Some of the reasons that I think recruiting is in the toilet right now is the ideological shift in what is expected of our military. Our military should be trained to fight and win wars. Simple as that. But I think they're being indoctrinated with all this diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff, the use of pronouns and all that, that really do diminish from having a ready fighting force. And I think that's part of the reason that some of the recruits are looking at this going, why would I want to do that? And it's starting to show in the numbers, and I am concerned about that, and I point the finger at the current administration, folks like Lloyd Austin. They've also engaged in what I think is relaxed standards for entry. Used to be you had to pass certain physical and mental capacity tests. And that's not happening anymore to the degree that it was when we had a ready fighting force. Relaxing the standards to make things equitable doesn't give us a ready fighting force. And Jennifer Granholm, our energy secretary, wants the military to be have all electric vehicles very soon. And I don't know what kind of time frame she put out there, but she is calling for an all-electric military vehicle fleet. And if that's not total incompetence, I don't know what else is. Does it support the theory of, are we ready to have those kinds of policies being pushed in Washington? And next up is all the stuff that you're seeing in the conservative media right now, not so much in the left-wing media, but if you haven't heard and you only get your news from MSNBC and CNN, then here's a news brief for you. The Bidens are being accused of accepting somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $30 million in personal bribes from adversary countries like China, Romania, Ukraine, and it's funneling through a series of LLCs that the Biden crime family has established to launder the money back and forth as it comes in. And the more and more layers of this onion get uncovered by the media and by congressional investigations, the more likely it is that our president is going to get nailed, and nailed hard, for being a foreign agent, for selling our sovereignty for about 30 cents a head. There you go. So, being involved in undermining our country for personal profit doesn't make this current administration very adept or anything close to being ready for any kind of World War III level event. The current administration, I'm going to put some pictures up here, and we'll talk a little bit about some of them as it comes up. We all know that a member of the cabinet is the Vice President, which is Kamala Harris. And if you've heard her speak, you know that she has absolutely no idea what she's saying or what she's doing. It's kind of a frightening thing that she's a single heartbeat away from the presidency. But I'll leave that stand for your research. Our Treasury Secretary, as we're facing huge amounts of inflation, and we'll talk about that. Inflation right now is still, while the level is starting to go down just a little bit, we're still at 3%, the latest published numbers. That means that the increase year over year is 3%. And if you go back a year, it was 8.3 year over year from the prior year. Okay? So now we're talking about nearly 9% total inflation, the way they calculate it today, which ain't the same as it was back in the 80s and 90s. So I'm pretty concerned about Janet Yellen, especially when she bows to the Chinese Communist Party during her visit there. That does not speak well of the United States' competency on the foreign stage. I've talked about Alejandro Mayorkas and his assertions that the border is secure. He should be impeached. I talked about Jennifer Granholm. Yeah, she wants to have an all-electric military vehicle fleet, and I can hardly wait to see how well that goes over in the event of a World War III event. Other folks that you may have seen or heard about, and maybe not, Javier Becerra, or as the president calls him, Beccaria, hasn't really done much of anything. Do you hear his name in the news? He hasn't really done anything except toe the line on the Biden policies. And we've got our illustrious Secretary of State, Tony Blinken. If you look at his name, and as it's often quoted or often put in news articles, his first name is Anthony. So A period, to abbreviate Anthony, A Blinken. Well, if you say it real fast, it sounds like Abe Lincoln. Anyway, he is not doing a stellar job on the world stage to give the United States the confidence on the world stage that the world needs. If we are supposed to be the world leader, and we're counting on, as one of our commenters said, and we're counting on the NATO countries to come to our defense should anything happen here in the United States, or if we're attacked somehow. No, it's not a conspiracy theory. I believe the planning is already in the works. And let's not forget some of the other competency tests that I put the current administration up against. One is our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the 13 dead soldiers that resulted from that, and the billions of dollars of weaponry, armaments, uniforms, bullets, tanks, trucks, you name it, that was deliberately left behind for the Taliban to become probably the second most well-armed enemy we've got. I mentioned before the Build Back Better plan that never happened. Yeah, that was one of the cornerstones of Joe Biden's run for presidency, and it never happened. And we're not getting the kind of infrastructure rebuild that's necessary because we're giving all our money away to fight a proxy war against Russia. He rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement. He extended the START talks, the START agreement with Russia. He has definitively weaponized the Department of Justice and the FBI to attack and go after relentlessly any political enemies that he's got. Let's not forget that Biden's age and his diminished physical and mental capacities are on the forefront right now. Do I think he's going to make a successful run for president in the next cycle? No, I don't even think he's going to make it till the next cycle. So that leaves us with a huge conundrum. He has effectively destroyed our energy independence by doing things like canceling the Keystone Pipeline and doing some other crazy things that basically just shut down our dominance in the global energy stage. And now we're begging countries like Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia to sell us oil at a premium price. And that premium price is what we're going to end up paying as we try to refill our strategic petroleum reserves. And our national debt. I'm trying to find some absolutely reliable figures on what's going on with the national debt right now. And believe me, that's an elusive fact to try to pin down. I've seen numbers quoted anywhere from 2.5 trillion increase to 4.5 trillion increase. So the most reliable numbers that I can find right now say that in January of 21, the month that Biden took over as president, the national debt was $27.7 billion, almost $27.8 million. At the end of June, last month, it was $32.3 billion. That's an increase of $4+ trillion. The single largest expenditure I believe we're going to have in the future is the interest on that debt. We owe it to ourselves to be well informed. We owe it to ourselves to be politically savvy. We owe it to ourselves to be able to state the facts, to stave off this dreadful enemy that we've got, the woke left, that will just never stop in their zeal to shut us up and shut us down. This is the Prepared Suburbanite reminding you to be prepared always, and I'll see you all on the next video.